Imagine walking into a luxury kitchen today. Filtered water, imported wine, soft white bread, sweet sauces, reclining after dinner because exercise is something other people do for you. In the modern world, that image screams success, health, even. Wealth is supposed to buy the good life, better food, better comfort, better odds of living longer. Now drag that assumption into ancient Rome, because this is where it gets awkward. In parts of the Roman world, the man wearing the expensive ring, drinking the expensive vintage, and eating the expensive delicacies could be loading his body with more slow-acting damage than the exhausted person serving his table. Not every slave, not every noble. This is not a bedtime story about justice magically balancing itself. Field slaves, mine workers, and galley laborers often lived lives of pure horror. But in a very specific Roman paradox, some wealthy Romans accumulated risks that made them less biologically resilient than certain slaves under the same roof. The reason was simple. Roman status was toxic, sometimes literally. Hollywood loves to show Rome as a civilization of excess with perfect marble bodies, a few grapes, a little wine, everybody glowing with imperial health. Archaeology and ancient medicine would like a word. The elite did not just consume more. They consumed differently. Their food was more processed, more sweetened, more indulgent, and often more contaminated. Their days were more sedentary, their cities more crowded, their pleasures wrapped in chemistry, their bodies could not negotiate forever. Meanwhile, many slaves, especially domestic, agricultural, and skilled urban ones considered economically valuable, lived on cheaper staples that were brutally boring but strangely protective. Barley porridge, wheat bread, beans, lentils, onions, olive oil, a little fish, constant motion, fewer excesses, and in some cases less exposure to the very status markers that were slowly poisoning the master. To understand why, start with the survival math of the ancient city. Your body did not care about reputation. It cared about clean water, stable calories, physical movement, manageable toxins, and avoiding infectious collapse. Wealth could solve one of those problems while quietly worsening the rest. A senator or rich merchant had access to extravagant banquets, but banquet food was designed for display, not longevity. White bread from finely milled flour, rich sauces, salt-heavy preserved foods, large amounts of wine, delicacies like organ meats, shellfish, and sweetened reductions. These were prestige foods. They signaled that you could command labor, trade, and distance. They did not signal that your kidneys, arteries, and gut were having a wonderful time. Now put that against a working slave in a household or on an estate. Not luxury, not kindness, just economics. A productive body was an asset. If you owned a cook, clerk, porter, tutor, or farm laborer, you did not want that body collapsing from gluttony, gout, or too much unmoving comfort. You wanted calories that were cheap and reliable. Grain, pulses, fermented foods, vegetables when available. The diet was repetitive, but repetition has an evolutionary advantage. It keeps you alive. The master reclined. The slave kept moving. In a pre-modern world, necessity often had better metabolic instincts than fashion. Then we reach the most famous suspect in the room, lead. Here we need precision, because the internet loves turning Roman history into one giant lead pipe meme. The truth is more interesting. Yes, Romans used lead widely, and some water moved through lead pipes. But pipes alone were not always the instant death trap people imagine, because mineral deposits could coat the inside and reduce direct contact. Roman engineers were not blind to the danger either. Vitruvius warned that lead workers looked pale and unhealthy and argued that clay pipes were safer. The Romans had clues. They kept using lead anyway, because convenience has always been a powerful religion. The more dangerous issue was elite food culture. Wealthy Romans loved defrutum and sapa. Grape syrups and reduced must use to sweeten and preserve. When acidic grape mixtures were boiled down in lead vessels, they produced lead acetate, a compound with a genuinely sweet taste. That part is almost too on the nose. A luxury sweetener that doubled as a slow poison. Add lead in cookware, storage vessels, cosmetics, and pigments, plus atmospheric pollution from Roman mining and smelting so intense that traces of it show up in Greenland ice cores far from Italy. Archaeology gives us the bone chemistry, Literature gives us the menu, and medicine gives us the mechanism. Lead is nasty because it does not need theatrical doses to cause long-term trouble. It interferes with the nervous system, damages kidneys, disrupts reproduction, contributes to anemia, and worsens gout by impairing how the body clears uric acid. So-called saturnine gout. Gout matters here because it was practically a status disease. Too much rich food, too much alcohol, too much indulgence, and the body starts punishing the foot like it is collecting unpaid taxes. Ancient writers repeatedly mocked elite excess, bloated dinners, and soft living. Satire is not a medical journal, but satire works because the audience recognizes the target. Lead was only one layer of the trap. Elite life also concentrated another killer: inactivity. That sounds almost funny until you remember how much survival depends on moving every day. Slaves walked, lifted, fetched, carried, scrubbed, and climbed. Wealthy men could outsource motion itself. Glamorous until biology enters the chat. Constant low-level activity improves circulation, insulin response, digestion, and resilience. You do not need a smartwatch to see that a man who sits through long feasts, drinks heavily, and sleeps after overeating is not giving his body a great survival strategy. Galen and other ancient writers kept recommending moderation, exercise, and simple food. Roman doctors were already trying to tell rich Romans that luxury was eating them alive. There is also the urban factor. The elite clustered in cities where crowding, sewage, contaminated food, parasites, and infectious disease were routine. Wealth helped, but only so far. You could own a larger house, yet still live inside an empire where grain spoiled, water fouled, and servants, visitors, and markets moved microbes through every social layer. The rich man had more doors. Disease still knew the address. Some rural slaves, though worked brutally, were sometimes less exposed to the concentrated disease ecology of dense city life. Not a universal rule, but enough of a pattern to matter. Now the necessary pause. Saying rich Romans could die younger than their slaves is not saying slavery was healthy. That would be absurd. Many enslaved people suffered trauma, malnutrition, punishment, overwork, and early death, and their average lifespan was almost certainly shorter once you count childhood mortality and violence. Skeletons across the Roman world show hard labor in the joints and lives worn down by force. But adult survival is not controlled by one variable. It is controlled by stacks of them, and sometimes one stack is surprisingly protective. This is a conditional comparison, not a general law. A slave who survived childhood, received regular grain rations, moved all day, ate mostly legumes and coarse bread, drank less luxury alcohol, and avoided the most lead-sweetened elite foods might outlast a master marinating in status. Horrible system. Unexpected biology. The science keeps pointing the same way. Stable isotope studies of Roman remains show clear dietary differences between populations, and skeletal lead levels sit well above many earlier baselines. Though not everyone absorbed the same amount, the elite simply had more pathways into it. Ancient latrines and kitchen residues confirm heavy use of grain, legumes, olive products, and fish sauce across the empire, while access to refined, imported, prestige foods rose with wealth. The texts add behavior. Seneca mocks overeating and luxurious softness. Pliny comments on strange remedies and indulgences. Celsus and Galen keep circling back to moderation because rich patients kept giving them reasons to. When doctors across centuries tell powerful men to stop overdoing dinner, it usually means powerful men are overdoing dinner. There is a darker twist. Roman slavery itself created the paradox. Slaves made elite life possible. They cooked, carried water, managed baths, maintained estates, and produced the agricultural surplus that let the upper classes float above ordinary labor. But by removing effort from elite life, the system removed friction, and friction is often what keeps a body honest. The slave had no choice but movement. The master had no reason to stop consuming. One body was ground down from the outside. The other was softened and poisoned from within. If this is starting to sound uncomfortably modern, good. That is the real lesson. Human bodies are ancient machines living inside status games they never evolved for. Give us sweetness, convenience, constant sitting, and social rewards for excess, and we will call it success right up until the results arrive. Rome did not invent that pattern. It just ran an early and very expensive experiment on it. So what actually killed the rich Romans sooner in these cases? Not one villain, but a conspiracy of comforts. Lead from elite consumption, heavy drinking, rich diets, high salt, repeated feasting, less movement, urban disease, the physiological cost of display. The slave, in certain contexts, survived not because the world was fair, but because survival sometimes favors the plain, the repetitive, and the necessary over the luxurious, the novel, and the prestigious. And maybe that is the most Roman punchline of all. The empire that conquered the Mediterranean could not conquer the chemistry of its own dinner table. The body does not salute status. It does not care how many servants stand nearby. It responds to what you swallow, what you breathe, how often you move, and how long you keep asking it to turn excess into life. So here's the question I want to leave you with. If a future archaeologist examined our bones, our blood chemistry, and the remains of our kitchens, which of our luxury habits would make us look like the rich Romans of today? Which comfort would turn out to be our lead cup? And out of everything here, what shocked you most? That wealth could become a slow poison? Or that survival sometimes hides inside a bowl of beans and a life with no choice but movement?